Welcome to our webinar on maximizing your certification to ISO 13485. I'm joined today with our technical manager and global scale owner for medical devices, Zahir. And Zahir, I'll kick it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Holly, for this nice introduction. So thank you for all of those who joined us today. The purpose is that we felt that there's a good feedback that we can provide to our clientele based on the experience we have encountered in the past 3 years from those clients that they upgraded, transitioned to the new standard, going from the 1345 2003 to the new one. What were the most common things that we found that it's handy so that our clients, and even for new clients that are maybe on this call, can use as tools. Maybe for most of you, this is not extremely new or not something added value, but we were trying our best to share with you the major things that we find that it needs proper attention. So as per the webinar link that was sent out, there were 3 main topics. We will try to cover at a higher level what are the techniques that can be used, what are the resources that are available now after the transition is out. And it already now, as you know, 1345-2003 expired February 28, 2009. And as of now, we're not talking upgrade. This is the standard now until we have a new revised version out on ISO platform. But at the moment, this is the standard that we have. The other topic we're going to cover is the NCR's nonconformities. Yes, there's a lot of people that hate it, they fight it during an audit, but at the end, it's a healthy process to address those nonconformities. Those can be originating from within the same company internally, based on internal audits, quality management issues identified within the same organization, or from externals, or from your clients, from your suppliers, or from your certification bodies. In this case, it can be an example, SAIG Global. And then we have this controversial issue related to software. So software has been big ubiquity and there's a lot of confusion taking place. So we've been trying to train our auditors, explaining to them how and what they need to do when they encounter a situation that's still not clear, how organizations are addressing these specific things. The second point is the quality agreements. So what does it mean? Like, it's just taking it over a note, the footnote that we have something on our webpage, the terms and conditions. Is this sufficient or no? It has more importance and impact on the quality management system. Holly? So this is mean, yeah. So the key benefits for most of those who already decided, if you go to the next slide. So for most of those businesses who already took that decision to go into the standard, they already acknowledge that there is, it's important for different aspects, or there's different reasons. It can be coming from your clients. It can be coming from your regulatory requirements. It can be just to improve the efficiency of your quality management systems. So we have clients that they have different standards. It can be 9001, aerospace, and also they need medical because they are only doing parts and services that can benefit different industries, or it can be really regulatory, especially for those that have a final medical device. So it's really more of a strategic why you need this standard. It can be just to improve the efficiency and lower the cost and the impact on the company. You can now, at the global level, there are more and more countries that they say, well, if you have this standard, then yes, you will have more easily accessible to those markets. Now, this doesn't mean it will grant you licenses, but this is going to be a strong point for having such a certificate. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk about what is the FDA perspective today and how they see this new version of the standard in the American. If you can go back to the previous slide. So you can also make sure the standard now is touching more on regulatory and also customer safety. And definitely it's also add more of a marketing prestige for your QMS that you have and holding this standard. So next slide. Now, the committee that developed the standard 1345, it's called TC210, and I'm not going to go in details into that. The FDA and those who are responsible for the QSR, they are part of that committee. And drafting this new version of the standard, the 2016, I believe you already heard that it had a lot of input from the FDA. This led to a situation where mid-2018, the FDA sent out, how to say, like a communication where they are today considering to replace the QSR with the 1345, and this is something really huge. Manufacturers in Canada and the US, all over the world, when they are working on developing a final medical device and they want to license those products in the US, they had to comply with the QSR regulation. So they would, if you see their checklist, they would have the QSR and they have the 1345 and they have the Canadian requirements and whatever. So now FDA, they are considering seriously and trying to study the gap, why and how to implement and replace the 1345 with the QSR. So in an extreme example, when an FDA inspector comes to the facility, they will be using the 1345 checklist, same thing that our auditors are using today when they are doing their inspections. Now, there might be additional gap, which is on top of the 1345, and this is just pending the release of the final FDA note on this. So with this slide, I have shared two links. The first one is that today, what is the reference number and what is being circulated out to the public, and the second link related to this movement. So as you can see, the 1345 here, it's already how to say, adopted by the FDA for future use. So the topic that we are touching today is how to maintain an effective ISO 1345. So we're talking here with clients that they know the standard, they have trained their internal auditors owners as you're doing today, and it's not news at the end. So now we are trying to see how to do it in an effective way from our perspective. The auditors, when they come to your facility during the opening meeting and the closing meeting, they say a keyword, which is sampling, and this is where I'm going to focus on. So the auditors, when they start there after the opening meeting, they start to explore your quality management system. And there is this school which tries to train all those auditors that you need to follow audit trails, but they have to start from somewhere. So most probably the auditor, depending on the auditor, but they would ask to send them in advance key documents, such as the management review report and records and presentation. They would ask for an analysis of data, complaints, and NCRs. The main reason, as you know by now, is that they want to start from somewhere. They don't want to go from scratch. They don't want to just go and pull up any file. They are building up a story to put it in their report. Now, when they go and check the management review, they have almost all the data that was discussed by the upper management. So they are not auditing the management per se. Yes, they are seeing the key inputs, the key outputs that they were covered in the management process itself, but they are more interested in the data that they have in this and the discussions that they took and the conclusions of this meeting. Now, when we are talking here is that you, as organizations, when you are investing in training your internal auditors, they are attending trainings with third parties. It can be online, it could be on-site, to the new standard, and now they are understanding what are the requirements of the standard. What we have noticed so far is the most practice is what? Is to develop a checklist, which I'm not against it. On the contrary, it's very good to have a checklist. And those internal auditors, when they go and to interview their colleagues, you make sure that you are having a schedule. They are not auditing their own activities, which is very good, but they are going and exploring and seeing, well, for purchasing, do they have a procedure? Yes. Now, when they went and asked the question, it's like really not building up a case based on that they can go now and audit. So I'm making now a link between the auditing process and the recommendation is that your internal auditors I believe it's going to add more value, especially now you are investing in their time now and doing their internal audits and preparing for the upcoming audits, is that let them have access to key documents of the, not maybe the management review, because it might have financial and might have other information that you don't want to disclose to all employees. But depending on the preparations of the audit trail, let the internal auditors have their sense in doing their own sample, building it up exactly as an external auditor would do. And the other thing here is that also you have to emphasize that these internal auditors not just focus on what they are having in their hands, as if that, okay, we have a procedure, but also let's explore more areas such as what in the management review we said there are new regulations coming up in the US or in Canada or whatever in the world related to electrodes. Now, the internal auditor doesn't have this view. So when I'm, again, going back to the management review and saying, well, you have already reconciled a lot of information that has been communicated to the management review, where we think it's also very important that you share it with your internal auditors, whatever is allowable as shareable information, so that they can build up their internal audit and go out and start their sampling process. So the recommendation is that to start from somewhere and using from the data that you already have at your organization, and know most of the time you share it with us before the audit, and that the regulatory requirements, that there were new revisions that are out and released, and not to forget as well is the nonconformities. So if you had any NCRs, especially those that were raised internally within the organization in a previous internal audit after releasing a product or whatever, the internal auditors, yes, it might be that they are focused on auditing purchasing, but also let them have access to those internal NCRs that were raised against purchasing, so that will give them a better overview of the internal audit process. Now, the expectations for us as a certification body when we come and conduct our audit is to see that you have conducted an internal audit, and this is the minimum requirement as most of what we have seen so far. But taking it to the next level is based on the recipe that I'm sharing it with you. So going over the NCRs and verifying the effectiveness for those NCRs that were raised internally and externally is very beneficial and will improve we'll have more effective implementation of the standard. So, in this slide, what I wanted to share is that after the release of the standard, so the standard was released in 2016, February 28, March 1st. Okay, well, we heard at that time that there is going to be a release of a practical guide. And again, I do understand that from the audience we have today, not all of them, maybe most of you are aware of this practical guide, but maybe for not all of you. So in this practical guide, it's the same committee who sat and developed the standard 1345 and released it in February 28, 2016. It took them close to 1.5 years to come up with a conclusion and to release a document which is called a practical guide. Now, I'm not marketing this product. This is not for free. It's on the ISO webpage. But for those companies that are trying today to build up and have a better understanding and improve the implementation, I believe it's an add value to have this guide, invest a little bit more, and see how they can maximize the usage of the standard implementation. They might find a room where you think that we are just developing a part, not a product. And for that, we don't need to do any reporting to the FDA. So here you will have definitive understanding and clearance of what applicable for you or not. So also here, the remaining of the ones that go under it, the GHTF, all of those are free. You can access them from the GHTF website. Global harmonization workforce that was now they call it the International Medical Device Forum. All of those, they are already posted or they're already referenced in the current version of the standard. Go and see these references. And the last thing that I would always like to refer to, even now after being 3 years in the new standard, is always go and consult Annex A. So if you pick up the current version of the standard 1345, you have two or three annexes at the end. So Annex A for me is like the Bible. What I mean by that, I always go there and see the gap between the comparison between the older standard and the newer standard. To my point, you are already upgraded to the new version of the standard. Today you have a certificate, which means that everything is fine. But please remember, auditors sampled. So they're sampling for a specific record that took place in the last audit, maybe didn't lead them to something that they felt that there is a break in the quality management system. So when you go and proceed and preparing your internal audits, highlighting this gap between the older standard and the new version of the standard will increase the visibility of what might have been missed. We have used the old standard for more than 8, 9, 10 years, and it's not easy to go and proceed with this change. So my point is that in preparations for your upcoming audits, it's important to read again, maybe at a minimum once, and prepare and refresh your internal auditors what they need to go over before they proceed and execute their internal audits. The second topic on our agenda that we felt that we needed to clarify and share with our clients is nonconformities, and those are internal and external. What are the expectations and what are the timeframes? This is not in news, and I'm certain that most of you already know all this information. So again, we are here not to repeat things that you already know, but how to address this and what are the expectations from the auditors, because we try to calibrate and explain to our auditors what they are looking for. Clients, we receive inquiries from our clients saying, well, does the auditor has the right to do this? Can the auditor do that? So for that reason, we are again sharing this information. So when you have a nonconformity raised, again, it can be internal or external. We always want to know, why did this happen? And to give you an example, we were purchasing a specific part from a supplier. Now, behind the scenes, the designers came up with revision D. And they said, well, for revision D, we're going to use another component, replacing the previous one. Now, when the order goes all the way, and then when you are testing the final product, you find out, oh, we missed it. We are using the part or the component that was originated from revision C. So this is, I'm talking internally, you have identified that, not an external auditor who found it. So you need to understand, why did this happen? Where did we miss it in the process from the design, updating the diagrams, notifying our purchasing department, notifying the supplier, notifying the receiver and the inspection, notifying those who are collecting the items before the assembly and then the final test. So anywhere within the line should have identified and picked the gap and the difference between the previous component number and the new component number. So here we're not going to go over a detailed example. It's more, this is the root cause, identify it. And it's a process, not to say it's the fault of that person. We are not here against people. It's more about a process, procedures, work instructions that can illustrate and help us streamline the process, not in this exceptional case, but in different applications. Now, following that, so once you come up with identifying the root cause that you believe this is why it happened, you share it with the auditor. Now, the auditor is going to read, and based on his experience with you, he's going to make an assessment and say, yeah, I think this root cause is acceptable. Now, also, because you already have this component that has been misused in this specific product, you have to determine, can we still sell this revision D with this wrong component? We have here two options. Just I'm taking this example, yes and no. If yes, did you do the consent from those who are tested the product to make sure that it's safe and we will not harm and everything will function as declared? If yes, you have to document all of those and you share it with the auditor. We already did our analysis and we believe still we can use it. So here, external auditor, internal audit, or quality manager, but it needs to be documented. Now, no, you cannot use it. Well, here you have to take the hard way and take an extreme measures how to eradicate this problem. So this is an immediate correction because we don't want to send out a product that is not fulfilling or complying with your own requirements. The corrective action is that what is your plan? What is your long-term plan? How this will be avoided in the future from happening? And this also can be an eye-opener for different processes. So the root cause correction and corrective actions, all of those are going to be documented. It can be on SAIG global forms. It can be on your own forms. But at the end, the expectations is that you, if we are talking about SAIG global auditor or another certification body, you share with your certification body, this is the root cause correction and corrective action. And this is how we are going to verify the effectiveness of this work. Now, the auditor, when he receives all this information, they're going to say, okay, well, based on this, I agree with the root cause. With the correction, I disagree. I agree with the corrective action. And this can be iterated more than once. So the purpose of this slide is how can we minimize the iterations between you and the auditor. And for the reason the auditors are busy, they are flying, doing audits, so their response time could be low. Like you send it today and you can say, well, we sent everything to the auditor and we haven't heard from them back. One is going to process and tell us how did they accept our NCR or not. And the second thing is the cost, because the auditor each time is going to review this non-conformity is going to add additional cost on the organizations. So making sure that you really understand what are the expectations in this process will help you address that NCR from the first shot. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is the timeline here that I'm sharing 3 columns. The first one is showing the NCR that was raised on day 0. Day 0 is the last day of the audit. This is the day where you had your closing meeting. And from that, the timer will start. So here, when you go over that, you have point A, B, and C, you have a total of 30 days to complete sending all the information to your auditor for a minor NCR. So when I'm talking about minor NCR, we want to identify why, what are the immediate corrections taken, and what is the proposed corrective action. All of that needs to be sent to your auditor for their approval within 30 days. Now, you can send it the following day, you can send it the following week, but this is the maximum approved duration as per SAIG global procedures in order to clear this NCR. So what does cleared mean? Does it mean it's closed? No. It means that the auditor reviewed all the information provided. So you have provided your CAPA on your own form. You provided objective evidence, you revised a procedure, you trained your auditors, and now this is your plan for the future, and this is how we're going to verify the effectiveness. So the auditor, when they take this information, they process it, and they summarize it in the SAIG global form and say, well, you know what, next audit, and normally they should send it back to you, telling you what are their plan for the following audit. So when they send it to you and you receive it, this document is going to be used again in the following audit. So in the, let's say, November 2018 audit, your NCR was cleared. Everything is fine now. And today you are not worrying about it because your following audit is November 2019. The auditor, when they come to the audit November 2019, they will have copies of all of the NCR forms that were raised in the previous year. And they will be reading the summary notes of either their notes or from another auditor who did the audit in November 2018. So it's very important that you as industry are aware that these forms, NCR forms, are valuable. And this is what is going to summarize and guide the auditors what to verify. So they're verifying the effectiveness, they're verifying that you have implemented everything that you have proposed as a corrective action. If everything is fine, they say, perfect, now the NCR is closed. If they find that it's not effective or you didn't follow the plan, then here the NCR is going to be escalated, going from minor to a major. And we don't want that. Now, on the right column, the last column is the major NCR. And here we see that there are two flashes, one in orange, one in green. Because here we have two time frames. You have in total 60 days to address those NCRs. So the first one is to, well, the first 30 days where you can communicate back and forth with the auditor. This is our root cause, and this is the correction, and this is our proposed corrective action. Ideally, you share this with your auditor because the expectations in the following 30 days, you start implementing these corrective actions and share them with your auditor as a proof that now everything is fixed and this will never happen again because it's a major. Based on their approval, they will close this NCR after 60 days from the closing meeting. In the following audit, exactly as the auditor did under minor, they have to review and check the previous NCRs, even though they were closed. But since it was a major, just you want to pick up a sample, one or two, to make sure everything is working properly with the organization. So this process is followed in each audit activity. If it's a certification audit, stage 2. If it's a surveillance 1, surveillance 2, recertification, or for those who are doing semi-annual audits, also is going to happen every 6 months. Next slide, please. So here we come to the last section in our proposed webinar, where we are going to address two different controversies that were introduced by the standard new revision. So in the next slide, is going to touch the software. And again, here I'm referencing a new technical report that was released by the same committee, TC210. So TC210 released the standard 1345, TC210 released the practical guide, and also TC210 released this standard. So these are, this one and the practical guide are not normative. You don't have to follow those, but those are more of guidance, practical examples, how to address, in this specific example, software that is used in quality management system. So I wanted to make sure that you are aware of the release of this standard. It goes to 2017, around June, July 2017. They touch base with different kinds of software used in the quality management system. ERP, we bought an ERP. Are you asking me to, just an example from responses we got from clients. Are you asking us to validate an ERP? We didn't develop the ERP. That's correct. We are not asking you to validate the ERP. But to my knowledge, most of the industry, they customize the ERP for their own applications. They buy modules and then they tailor these modules to satisfy their own usages. In this case, what we're asking is the validation of the customization. Well, in this case, also the expectations is to go and conduct a validation process. Now, depending on the industry, depending on the number of employees, depending if you have those resources who can handle this process or not, well, we are only like, let's say 10 employees. We are using ERP and Microsoft Excel. We have the quality manager. Is the responsibility of quality manager to do this or not? Well, this is something that we cannot answer. Maybe the standard that of the technical report I'm referencing can help you guide and see how this can be handled. You need to hire somebody to help you with that or process or not. The expectations of validation is what? When we do 1 + 1, are we sure we're getting the answer 2? And for that specific reason, I highlighted Microsoft Excel in red. So almost most of the industry, they came back to us and say, is this serious? Are you asking us to go and validate a product that was already released by Microsoft? Are we now going to validate Microsoft Word? No, I'm not talking about Microsoft Word. is the focus on any software that you customize. Here in this specific example, I'm talking about Microsoft Excel because this is something that I highly use in monitoring a lot of data that is related to my department, how many audits, how many auditors, how many reports were reviewed. So here I have a lot of formulas and macros that is processing the data that I extract from my database. So when I have today a routine that I'm relying on to generate reports that later on we're going to take hard decisions, we want to make sure. I think we have technical issue here. Yeah, so here we want to make sure, no worries. So here we want to make sure that in 2018, when we presented how many scars, how many products that we didn't accept from our suppliers are there. So when we go and generate another report in 2019, we want to make sure that we used the same formula. So we are comparing apples to apples. So now when we go and do our analysis in 2018 and we see that we have 30% of rejections and we changed the employee, a new employee went to another role, so a new employee came in. When they take in the new simple Excel file and they start changing the formula that was originally used. Now, this will show in this example that we only have 10% of rejections, which might not reflect the fact. So when we talk about validation of such tools, is that once somebody signs and approves a specific formula because was tested 1 + 1 = 2, and not by any kind of mistake, somehow it led to 1 + 1 = 11, this is where you need to document, and all of that differently. It is more, all of this is, as the standard states, is all based on the risk. So once you identify the formulas, the macros, how you are going to process your data you're going to analyze, then you can lock those forms, lock the software so that the other person who is going to revise the formula change something in the content, because again, we always learn. We might identify there was a problem in the past. We want to correct it. So we have to go and amend the validation report or amend the change as a change for that specific form that today we have changed it. That person changed it. We tested it. Now we verified that everything is fine. And then we lock the sheet all over again. So this is how we are training our auditors. This is what are the expectations, is that you as industry are identifying what and how you are validating those softwares. The second topic in the following slide is related to quality agreement with third parties. So we have seen a lot of examples where, yes, I'm just buying this plastic mold, and when I'm buying it, I have like a footnote that points out to a website that my website says in the terms and conditions that, you know what, if you make any changes to that product, well, you have to notify us in advance, and for them, this is fulfilling of the quality agreement, and which is good practice. We are not against it. But here again, what we wanted to make sure is that you as industry know, and maybe yes, you can push on that with the auditors when they come and ask you maybe some information that is going beyond its intended use. So the quality agreement for a component supplier is going to be different than a supplier of services or for an authorized representative. So what I'm saying here is comparing 2 points, suppliers and third parties. Now, the standard doesn't really talk about third parties. What the standard states under 4.5, when an organization chooses to outsource any process that affects product conformity to requirements, it shall monitor and ensure control over such processes, all the way, and it says that the requirements with the controls shall include written quality agreements. Now, the point here is that suppliers basically have to do their own thing, and you decide if the products fulfill your requirements. Third party, which is covered under 4.5, are when you have an organization is acting on your behalf of your organization, including things that they are doing under your name or under your own, taking responsibility on your behalf. So in this case, this is where you can and you have to use specific quality agreements, and this is different than the footnote and everything related to the change of the specs of the product. Now, here there's a link that I have posted, and this will point you to an FDA website. Now, this is just a sample, and the application is not medical device. The application is pharmaceutical because we don't have that much information available online. But it can be used as a guidance to help you in identifying those who fall under the category of third party, or just providing you with components and how and what the quality agreement should look like. Next slide. So to conclude this webinar, hopefully it added value for most of those who attended, and we are trying and planning now for our upcoming audits. So we are also working with our auditors, making sure how they address the standard today of this year when they're doing their audits. We acknowledge that they're doing surveillance audits, so it's need an upgrade. They will not be auditing all the requirements of the standard. It's based on NCR raised in the previous year and the normal surveillance activities that are audited under each surveillance. So in this year, or under each surveillance, we have to go over complaints, management review, internal audits, any recalls, any issues with your products that was released to the market. Plus, they might choose one or two other processes. So so here you know that how we are training our auditors. We made recommendations about how you run your internal audits. We're not asking you to change, not at all. It's more of that when you are releasing your internal auditors, what is their mindset and their attitude when they go and conduct the training. The second point is that we didn't cover here, but to avoid any delays or any issues with your audits, it's very beneficial that you communicate in advance to your certification body. If it's SAIG Global, communicate with your scheduler that if you had any changes foreseen, that here it's not all the time. A change means automatically that we need to increase the audit durations, which add cost. No, not at all. It's more that if there was any of those change, will help us tailor our audit plan. In a meaning, if the auditor chose, for example, to audit production when you had a change in the design, he will audit production in his audit plan. But when he goes and identifies this new product, when he comes back and makes a recommendation for design, we might send him again and do a special audit. Why to go through all of that when you communicate with us such a change? And also communicating with the auditor when you receive the audit plan and tell the auditor, well, you know what, we believe that we made changes here and we think it's better to cover that area. If there's a new site, there's a new head count increase or decrease, change in the scope of the products. So communication is very essential. And the last thing, and this is message targeted for most of those who are doing only parts and services. In the past, they've had experiences with SAIG Global and other certification bodies where we were always asking them, what are you manufacturing? And they will tell us, it's not us, it is our clients. So today our client is using our PCB for a blood pressure pump. And in the next audit, they might say, well, no, today they are using it for an X-ray machine. But at the end, what you're doing is simply a PCB. Now, when you have your auditors emphasize, because you already have your files, but emphasize to the auditors, hey, we are not doing a medical device, a final medical device. We are doing now parts and services. So there was a new accreditation rule that was released in 2017 under the name of MD9 2017. This will make it easier for you to schedule more auditors that have those specific parts and services to schedule your audits more timely. So here I come to a conclusion of our webinar. It's now time for your questions, as Holly stated. As a reminder, next week and the following week, we will be going over the MDSAP as announced by Holly. And thank you again for staying with us until now, and hopefully this presentation added value.
Thank you so much, Zahir. A really good comprehensive overview. I received a number of questions throughout on MDSAP as well as the links that were in the slide deck. So just to confirm for everyone, they will be, you'll be able to click on the links with the slide deck that we'll send out within a few days here. So if you're watching it on demand, you can click on the slide deck and access those links. So that's great. The next 2 webinars, again, on MDSAP, you have those links, and we'll refresh in the webinar follow-up. But actually, I think I've managed to answer most of the questions, Zahir. So we can close off the day. I want to thank everyone for attending, and Zahir, to you for your presentation, and have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Thank you, everyone.